Welcome to our Schneps Media webinar, The Elder Law Triangle. We'll be getting started right now. Please note this is recorded so you can watch it again and you can share it with your community, family, and friends. Thank you to our live audience for joining us today. Although we can't see you or hear your voice, we would love to hear from you. So please ask questions using the chat or Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll save some time at the end to get to as many as possible. So thanks again, everyone, for joining. Hello and welcome to Schneps Media's webinar series. My name is Sky. I work with Schneps Media, the largest local media company in the New York metro area. We publish over 70 newspapers, magazines, webinars, and events throughout Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan, the Bronx, Westchester, Long Island, and Philadelphia. This webinar is being recorded and can be accessed on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/schnepsmedia. Today, we will discuss how you can make the best care arrangements for your loved ones, which involves three distinct components: medical, financial, and emotional decisions, hence the elder law triangle. If you're watching live or the recorded version of this webinar, you will learn how Cona Elder Law's holistic approach can help you navigate the elder law triangle to assist you and your aging loved ones with planning for major life decisions and future healthcare needs through estate planning, asset protection, and long-term care planning. I'm pleased to have with me on today's panel the following experts from Cona Elder Law, and I will tell you about them, and then they'll tell you a little bit about themselves. First on the screen is Melissa Negrin-Weiner. She is a senior partner at Cona Elder Law. Ms. Negrin-Weiner manages the Government Benefits Department, concentrating her practice in the areas of asset protection, Medicaid eligibility planning, estate planning, special needs planning, mediation, guardianships, and veteran benefits. She supervises the preparation of Medicaid applications for nursing home care, home health care, and community benefits, resolves complex Medicaid issues, and represents families facing a reduction in Medicaid home care hours and services. Our second panelist here is Jennifer Cona. She is the founder and managing partner of Cona Elder Law. Ms. Cona practices exclusively in the field of elder law, including representing older adults and their families in connection with Medicaid planning, preservation of assets, estate planning, estate litigation, probate, and administration of estates, special needs planning, veteran benefits, and guardianships. Ms. Cona also founded the Healthcare Reimbursement and Recovery Practice Group. So thanks again to our panelists for joining me this morning, and to everyone watching. As a reminder to our live audience, if you have any questions that surface in your mind during the course of this conversation, you can use the Q&A function to type in your questions, and I'll pose them to our panelists at the end of this discussion. So let's begin with you, Jennifer, founder and managing partner of Cona Elder Law. Give us an overview of your practice.
Good morning, Sky. Thanks so much for having us. It's always good to see you. So our practice is very much holistic. People come to us for their legal needs, of course, but we really take a broader view of what we can help people with, because we're looking at multiple generations. The baby boomer kids may bring in mom or dad. Maybe there's a crisis. Maybe mom or dad needs to go to assisted living or a nursing home. Maybe there's an estate planning need, and that's impacting the entire family. That's impacting the middle-aged children, the older parents, the next generation down below. So it's really multifaceted and very holistic. So we're not just helping the immediate problem right here, right now, which is what a lot of law firms do. We're taking a broader view and helping all along the way and wrapping that all up, because you have to step back. You have to not just solve that one problem, because there's so many tentacles to it. And that's kind of what that elder law triangle is also. So because we do that, and we've all of us here at this firm have lived through this with our own parents, our own family members. We've all been there, so we know what it's about, and we practice what we preach, which is really why we're driven with such passion. This isn't just a job for us. it's a passion project. So that's where we're coming from. And that's why we're not just saying, oh, you could just do this, you could just do that, and then send people on their way. That's not how we operate here. And I think that really comes across. And that's why we want to offer the multi-generational holistic approach to what we do every day here, and give people the very best services, the very best in legal services, cutting edge. We're always looking for new ways to do things better for our clients. What can move things forward? Where can we push the envelope to make things better, make new law, which we're doing all the time, and then it all inures to our clients' benefit. So that's really where we're coming from.
Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of these laws changed during the pandemic with regard to certain administration and execution of things. So maybe it got more confusing for your clients.
Yeah, it was, some things were really, really helpful, such as will executions that could be done virtually. That was helpful. And that kept getting, rolled on month after month. And then all of a sudden it was yanked back. So some things were good. How that plays out in the future in terms of will contests, we'll have to see. But yeah, elder law is always evolving. When I first got into it some 25-ish years ago, it was a brand new field with no body of law behind it whatsoever. So, it was the Wild West, which made it really exciting. But that has never ended. It's still exciting because there's still so much change to be had. And that, again, also fuels our passion and fuels the collaboration between us as attorneys. I mean, Melissa and I will discuss different cases and what should we do. And what we always end up saying to each other is, what would we do if that was my mom or dad? That's how we always answer every single question. And that's how you know you're doing the right thing.
Melissa, was there a specific example or case study maybe that you want to give everyone to give an idea as to what you deal with and all the different facets involved?
Sure, absolutely. I'm going to go over a brief case scenario of something really very typical that we see every day. And that way, when we talk about the elder law triangle and more specifics, people can relate to it a little bit better. So we're going to introduce Karen, who is 45 years old. She's married and has 2 young children, one of whom is developmentally disabled. Karen's parents, John and Mary, live nearby and have always helped Karen with her children. Recently, Karen has grown concerned for her mother's health and safety. Mary has fallen a number of times, and Karen thinks it is imperative that a home health aide begin providing services. John has health issues and cannot pick Mary up when she falls. Karen is concerned that her mother may need a nursing home in the near future. Karen has a very demanding career and home life. She fears the additional stress of caregiving for her parents, even though she has always promised them that she would not put them in a nursing home. Karen is also sure that her parents want to protect all of their hard-earned assets. At this point, Karen is not sure if her mother really needs more care than what can be provided in the home. She has also heard that the cost of care in a nursing home is astronomical, and she doesn't know if there will be enough money to pay the facility and pay for dad to continue living at home. Mary and John were always tight-lipped about their finances. All at once, Karen is completely overwhelmed and emotionally distraught. She's unsure about the type of care her mother needs and has no idea how she will pay for it. She's also afraid to even broach the subject of long-term care with her parents or ask about their finances. So this is really a typical, situation when we sit down with the adult child, usually of the aging parents. This is the type of conversation we have. We talk about, like Jennifer said, not only the parents, but their lives, the adult child, what they're doing, who they're caring for. In this case, a developmentally disabled child herself, and she depended on her parents to help with her child. And it's just, this is why you can't just solve the problem in front of you, because there are so many problems around it. Mm-hmm. So looking at this scenario from a medical perspective, we have a lot of issues. We have issues regarding, what type of care does mom need, first of all? And when we meet with clients in that situation, we'll talk to them a bit about what's going on with mom. And we have a lot of experience, obviously, in dealing with these types of situations. So we can speak to our experiences. And also we have phenomenal resources in the community. So we can help with assessments, professionals that can come in and see from a health perspective what's happening. Look at safety issues in the house, pulling up carpets. Are there steps? Do the doors need to be widened for a wheelchair? What's going on with mom in that regard? And then there's the financial piece, of course. And for most people in the home setting, we look to community Medicaid for that care, for that coverage for care. And those laws are right now in a crazy state of flux. So during the pandemic, there was a change that was kind of brought to the forefront that there's going to be a look back now for community Medicaid. So what that means is Medicaid's going to look at what people do with their assets for the 2.5 years prior to their need for home care. And people will be penalized for transferring assets and doing asset protection. Now, we're used to this in the nursing home world because we have a 5-year look back in nursing home world, but we've never had this in home care world. We were able to move assets to a trust and have somebody eligible for community Medicaid the first day of the following month. So this is like a whole new area of concern. And to top it off, we're in a state of emergency. So the start date for this keeps getting pushed and pushed and pushed. So we're in this, planning kind of limbo. And that's something that I would talk to this woman about. Listen, if you think mom needs help now, let's do this now, because we don't know what's going to happen in January or April or July, because this is what we keep hearing about. We're going to push it. We're going to push it as far as the start date for this look back. So ideally, plan right away and get the care going if that's something that they're thinking that they need. Then there's a concern about what if she needs to go to a nursing home and what's going to happen to dad. Jen, did you want to talk about the nursing home piece?
Sure. Well, I guess, what happens when clients come in with these issues, this is really exactly what the triangle is. So they may come to us and they say, mom or dad needs home care. Mm-hmm. And that's what they come in thinking and saying and convinced of. And that may be just sort of, how do I get there? What am I going to do? And then our job is to say, all right, so how are we going to get there? But then there's these other pieces. How are we going to pay for that home care? What are the family resources? How long are they going to last? And then there is that emotional piece of, I can't tell you how many times we have had a parent say, I don't want a home health aide in my house. Don't you dare, bring somebody in. Or the child hires us to prepare the application. It could be a lengthy application, could be costly, could be whatever. And then the aide shows up, however long it's taken us to get the application approved, and mom sends them away. Mm-hmm. And case closed. Medicaid agency closes the case after all the work we've done. That has happened a number of times. So that's just a tragedy.
Right.
Or alternatively, the child will come in and say, I have no idea what I should do with mom or dad. I want mom to stay home, but we're hearing what they're saying, and we're like, okay, I hear that you want mom to stay home, but we know from what you're saying to us that mom is definitely going to need nursing home level of care, no question. And we're also looking at your bank records, and we know you're going to run out of money in 6 months, 8 months, 1 year. It's going to be gone because you didn't do any pre-planning, any asset protection planning. So And what comes with that also, what comes with all of this is the guilt piece. You know, guilt hangs heavy in the room. Will mom forgive me for putting her in the nursing home? Will dad forgive me for insisting a home health aide come into the house? You know, and that appears in every single case. And like I said before, we've experienced this in our own families. But, you know, we all know that we need to do this because I don't want to get that lifeline call. My dad's on the ground again, and he's in Florida, you know. So it's so multifaceted.
Yeah.
Which is why it's that triangle. And you can't just come in and say, okay, I think dad should stay home and, you know, the money's going to last forever and everyone's going to be guilt-free. It is not that simple at all. So that's why we really have to say it's just not, okay, it's going to be so easy, 1, 2, 3. It's going to be what care level is really at issue and appropriate. And then how are you going to pay for it? And how long is that money going to last? Okay, those are the really practical things. Okay, and that is essentially our job as lawyers. And then the third component for us is how can we help you navigate your relationship with your parent to get through that, to get through communicating that this is really going to be the best thing. We have our communication tips. We have tips on how to feel like you're not taking over, that your parent is not losing control. This is really difficult stuff.
Yeah, no, a few questions now come to mind. At what stage should someone come see you to get this counsel? Because I'm thinking about my parents who are both fine, you know, knock wood, but at what points should someone start planning for this?
The whole idea really is to plan while you're still healthy. And I mean, we preach constantly that as soon as someone turns 18, they should have a power of attorney and a healthcare proxy. You know, this is not for everybody, kind of associates it with being old or being elderly. And maybe it has something to do with the name elder law, but that's how, you know, that's what it's called. But planning, really, people should start looking at, asset protection planning and things like that. 55, 60 is really an ideal time because you want those waiting periods, the look back, the 5 years, you want it to come and go without an issue, without a phone call, without hey, Melissa, mom fell and I think she might need a nursing home and we haven't gotten through the 5 years and what's going to happen to the assets. You want to try to avoid that at all possible.
If you've done your asset protection planning, this is off the table. Your assets are protected and you can segue to whatever care level you need without worrying about the money. So nursing home care, you can avail yourself of, home care, you can avail yourself of, and assisted living, the assisted living program are available to you through the Medicaid program if you've done planning 5 years. Let's just assume 5 years for all of it, because the laws are currently in flux. So if you've done planning ahead, asset protection planning, you don't have to worry about this crisis planning. That is always the best.
Mm-hmm.
Never too early.
Yeah, never too early. And we like to tell clients, it's never too early and never too late. And you're never too rich or too poor to plan. Because if you have any amount of money, you want to protect it, right?
Right. Now, a little earlier, you mentioned that situation where the home health aide shows up, you do all the paperwork, and then mom refuses the entrance. What happens then in that situation? What do you do?
So we've actually seen this happen. What happens is that once Medicaid has financially approved somebody for care, that's when the kind of governing body, whether it's Department of Social Services or a managed long-term care company, they come in to do an assessment of mom. What does she need help with, right? And they go through all the different activities of daily living, bathroom, showering, things like that. And if mom I don't need help. I don't need help. I am fine. I mean, to the point where, someone could be sitting in a wheelchair with an oxygen tank. I don't need help. I'm fine. That's it. They leave and Medicaid closes the case because this person is refusing the help. And this goes to the emotional piece so much too, like Jen was saying, because when we sit down with the adult children, they always want to tell us what their parents can do, right? They don't want to sit there and talk about how bad it is that dad can't use the bathroom or take a shower. And I always have to kind of talk to them and say, listen, I understand how hard this is, but I understand you're telling me that dad can dress himself, but if he's wearing sweatpants and a sweatshirt every day, it's probably because he can't do his buttons and he can't tie his shoes and he can't, do the small motor things. And you need to kind of be able to face that and, put it out there, because that's how we're going to get the help. And so that's a really big emotional part of this whole thing is, looking at your parents and having to say, oh my God, they can't do this stuff anymore.
Yeah, it's really hard for the children and the parent to get past that. I'll never forget this really proud woman. She was like this dear client, but she was just so proud. So when the people came to do the assessment, she couldn't wait to show them all the things she could do on her own. Look at me, I can get out of my hospital bed and I can go to the bathroom and I can dress myself and I can do this and I can do that. And I went, no. They didn't open the case because she could do so much for herself.
But then what happened to her?
She didn't get services. They closed the case because for that, half an hour, 15-minute, half an hour period of time while she gave it all the energy she had to put on that great show, that was it. But people don't understand the system, and it's an education process, and there's some cultural issues in there too, and there's all kinds of stuff happening. And that's why we need the kids on board, so that they can also understand and they can help the parent. And if that's not happening, then we'll bring in a professional to be there for that assessment, to make sure that the proper things are documented and all that kind of stuff. Because that's also, it's a dignity issue, obviously, like I think about myself and what would I be like, I know exactly what I'm going to be like, actually. It's going to be a problem. So there's just so much to this stuff. And, you can see that it's just a lot of emotional issues. And none of these things are easy.
Wow. Well, you mentioned it's medical, financial, and emotional, and we can dive into each of those pieces a little bit deeper. And I want to just say again to anyone watching live, this is a heavy topic. So if you have any questions whatsoever, don't feel bashful. Type them into the bottom in the chat or the Q&A. Oh, here we get a question. And we will ask. Here, someone asked, how do you recommend it get handled when the parent is out of state?
Well, interesting question. You want to take it, Melissa?
Yeah, sure. So this kind of goes both ways. If you're here in New York and your parent is out of state, we'll definitely recommend to people that they have to speak to an elder law attorney in the state where mom is, because the laws for Medicaid, while they're regulated at the state level, even though they're funded partially, federally. So every state has their own rules. So it's very important to make sure you're speaking to somebody in the state where the person who needs Medicaid services is. If your parent is here in New York and you're out of state, which we see quite a bit, we work with families like that all the time, and there are so many resources available to the out-of-state children, really to be like boots on the ground, whether it's financial or it's medical, just keeping in touch, checking in, advocating, and of course we do all of that as attorneys as well, but we have resources if need be that we can assist the family. We've had this is very common, where kids are spread out all over the country and the parent is here. And, with technology and everything else, it's really, something that we're able to manage, but it's helpful to have attorneys who have the resources to steer you to help, especially with advocacy.
Could someone who's living here retain you? And then if their parent is in Florida, then would you be able to work with another firm in that other state as well?
Yeah, we do that really often. We have a huge network throughout the country of vetted and preferred elder law attorneys that we have worked with, and we know who's who, who the good ones are. There's a pretty big distinction between, as elder law has grown more popular, there's sort of the people that have been around since the beginning and then the newer ones. So you have to be kind of careful. So we work with the tried and true elder law firms that have been around for a long time. So we collaborate. We have of counsel relationships in Florida, New Jersey, some other states. And so we help people with those. And we also, like Melissa was saying, if someone's parent is here and the child lives elsewhere, we can get a geriatric care manager to be more boots on the ground here if they need lots of hands-on. And we can also help with decisions like if the child is here, should the parent be moved here? We get those kinds of questions a lot because, the lack of ability to visit is a really big deal, and to see for yourself how your parent is doing. And even actually when you're looking at making placement decisions, assisted living, nursing home, right here, and people ask for our guidance on that. How does this place compare to this place and that? Really, one of the most important factors is how convenient is it for you to get there from between work and home and things like that, because it needs to fit well into your life so that you can get to see mom or dad yourself with your children, whatever the case may be, so that you are there as often as possible. That's a really big factor. If it's a big drag, if you have to drive 45 minutes out of your way to go see your parent, that's just going to be, one more reason that you can't go, you can't fit it in, you don't get there this week. It's the same kind of thing with out of state. Maybe you want to think about bringing mom up here, even if the cost is more. And again, then we're back to that pre-planning. Your options are on the table again if you've done asset protection planning. So those are the things. And we also talk about families. You got to do that sooner than when you're in the air ambulette phase. So it's before someone really is in a bad health situation, but that's the only way to get them back up here. So these conversations need to be held sooner rather than later. So that's, back to your point, Sky, people need to have these conversations. They're awkward, they're hard. The money conversation is really hard because a lot of time the parents are like, what do you want to know about my money? What's it to you? And some families are really closed about that. But we particularly encourage people around the holidays to talk about these things, around the Thanksgiving table, or, the Hanukkah, table, or the Christmas feast or whatever. But when everyone's together, that's a good time to talk about this because people are together. So maybe not right at the meal, maybe with a hot toddy after, but it's got to be done. It really does. It's part of life. It's just part of life.
Now, you mentioned cost a number of times. How will someone know what their plan will cover or what Medicaid will cover? Is it the same for everyone? How does that work?
That really depends on the care. So if somebody was applying for home care, it's based on hours. So when they come and do the assessments and they determine that this individual needs 6 hours of care versus this individual who needs 12 hours of care, or maybe there's somebody who needs 24/7 live-in. So it's all going to be really based on that assessment and what the care needs are, which takes us back to the point we made earlier about making sure that at the assessment, everything is put out on the table, because that's how you're going to get your hours. So in cases sometimes where somebody is approved for 8 hours and the family feels they need a 24/7 live-in, in certain cases, we'll handle an appeal for those people to try to get more hours, or sometimes they have to pay privately for the difference. So it's all going to depend on how many hours of care they are given by Medicaid. For nursing home purposes, eligibility is, again, there's a 5-year look back. You have to be eligible. You may have a penalty period, which is a period of time where Medicaid won't cover you and you have to pay privately. And that in New York could be anywhere from maybe $13,000 to $22,000, $23,000 a month. It's a big number. So the earlier people plan, the more likely they're going to be out of that 5-year look back, and we can just get them directly on Medicaid benefits to pay for that care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are there any other figures? I know people are curious about the amount of money that this stuff costs. Like you mentioned, like 13 to 23,000 a month. Are there any other figures you could throw out there to give people an idea of the expense?
Well, I think for like a 24/7 live-in home health aide, if you were going to pay privately for that without utilizing the Medicaid program, you're probably going to easily be in the $10,000, $11,000 range, maybe even more, depending on the agency. So the Medicaid program, especially here in New York, I mean, it's a wonderful program, and the home care program is better, than anywhere in the country, which is why a lot of people will move their parents back up here. And there's no residency requirement, so you don't have to be here for a year or even a month to be able to to take advantage of those benefits. So, but yeah, you're looking at it's a lot of money and goes very quickly. Assisted living, depending on the facility. Some places have studio apartments, some have shared rooms, some have, 2-bedroom apartments. So you could be looking at anything from, $3,500 a month to, $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 a month for assisted living.
Wow.
I remember telling someone that, a nursing home on average will cost, $20,000 a month. And the person said, it was a client, and someone said, "You mean a year?" And I was like, no, a month. And they went, "What?" And I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
That's why we're here talking about asset protection planning in advance. People don't know. They don't seem to know, but it's very expensive care.
It is.
And the problem with it is that regular people, there's no person who can afford that. No one can afford that. And also the government can't afford that either. So, there's got to be some balance. It's going to change at some point, but it's just off the charts.
Yeah. Even, we get a lot of people who have long-term care insurance, and as great as their policy may be, and don't get me wrong, those policies are fantastic for home care and for assisted living. When it comes to nursing home, a lot of times we're still doing Medicaid planning because there's going to be a shortfall. It's just not enough to cover that cost.
Yep.
It is kind of morbid to think about. You save all this money and then you get really, if you're out of it, then you got to spend all your money to preserve yourself. And I don't know, it all goes away at the end.
Right. And honestly, most people want to leave something to their children.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want it all going, to the cost of their care.
Right. So yeah, so on that vein, there are a few questions come in about like this asset planning. So
Okay.
Julissa asked, is the option of pooled income trust still available?
So a pooled income trust is a special type of trust that's used in the community Medicaid or Medicaid home care arena. That's really what all it's used for. And yes, we utilize them all the time. If somebody's on community Medicaid limits the amount of income you're allowed to have. Right now, it's $884 a month. Majority of people make more than that with their Social Security, pension, whatever, other income sources they have. So we utilize the pooled income trust to protect that excess income so that we make sure it's available for their monthly bills and all of the things that they need every month. So we still utilize them probably, I would say 99.9% of our community home care Medicaid cases.
Okay. Another question here, does Medicare cover home care or adult daycare for someone with dementia?
I'll take that one.
Yep.
The answer is, but you want to take it, Miss?
No, go for it.
Oh.
You got it.
So Medicare covers acute care needs. So it's going to cover rehab. It'll cover some care when you get out of the hospital and go home, some physical therapy, occupational therapy, things like that. It's not going to cover daycare. It might cover some for a period of time. But it will, like I said, it'll cover some acute care when you first get home from the hospital. But that's it. It's not a long-term care provider. Medicaid is the long-term care provider of care needs. So once you're out of that phase of, the acute care needs, you're segueing to Medicaid. So that's where people are confused. A lot of people think, oh, I have Medicare, I'm good, it's covering everything. That is not the case. Medicare, think hospital, and that's really kind of about it. If you go from hospital to nursing home or rehab, you're going to get some Medicare days. You will get up to 100 days. Almost everybody gets the first 20 days covered in full. And then people will get somewhere between 21 and 100, depending on their care needs. But not everybody gets the full 100. It depends on their care level.
But you can use both in that situation. You can use Medicare and then segue to Medicaid.
Yes, you can use Medicaid as soon as your Medicare drops off.
Okay. See, now the questions are coming in. So good, audience, ask all the questions you have here. Here we go. This is a specific question about bank accounts. Do joint tenant bank accounts and brokerage accounts and a home retitled in trust more than 10 years ago count when applying to Medicaid?
So general rule is any joint account, so if a husband and wife are joint on their bank account, Medicaid considers the entire account belonging to the applicant. So you're limited to how much money you can have when you apply for Medicaid, and that's right now $15,900. So if you have joint accounts with a spouse, they're not considered 50-50. The entire thing is counted as belonging to the applicant. So there's a lot of planning to be done there.
Wow.
As far as trusts go and transfers of homes, there's the 5-year look back. The house would have had to been in trust for at least 5 years. But the trust has to be an appropriate trust that is acceptable for Medicaid asset protection purposes. So it would be something that we would have to look at to determine whether or not that house was protected.
See, it's like a game. That's why you need lawyers.
It is like a game.
Figure out the game.
Yeah, and the rules change frequently.
Yes.
Yeah. It's kind of like whack-a-mole.
Where do you think the industry is going then, now that the rules changed during COVID? Do you think it'll go back to what it was, or we'll move forward in a different way?
I think it's going to go back to where it was.
I do too. I agree.
Okay. Okay, more questions. What's your opinion on long-term care insurance?
Want me to do that? I mean, it's very much what I said earlier. Yeah, very much what I said earlier. I recommend people look into it. I don't, I have no issue with it. I think that it's fantastic for, again, home care and assisted living, because you're purchasing something that's going to give you a daily rate, right? So it's going to pay $100 a day or $200 a day or $300 a day, and your care may be more than that. So it might not necessarily cover everything, but it certainly works in in certain situations. And we always recommend that people, look into it to see if it makes sense for them.
And how much does it typically cover for assisted living, long-term care insurance?
It depends on your benefit. It depends on, your ultimately what the benefit of the policy is. So if the policy pays, $300 a day for nursing home and half of that for assisted living, then you're looking at $150 a day, which, may or may not get you where you need to be. And there's all sorts of riders where you can get, there's inflation and things like that. So it's very, policy specific, person specific. You have to be able to obviously medically qualify for it. So there's a lot that goes into it. And we have wonderful resources and people that we deal with that we refer to if we, have a client that we think really needs to look into it.
Mhm.
Yeah, at the time of estate planning, when people are in their 50s and 60s, it's definitely part of the discussion. Everybody should look into it. It may not be for everybody, but it's definitely part of the discussion because you are insuring against the risk. The statistics are that probably all of us are going to need some level of care at some point.
Mhm.
So, and it's a matter of how you want to manage those costs, by elimination periods, by the inflation riders, spousal shared benefits, things like that. So it really is something that is or can be a really good benefit to a plan, an estate plan.
Mhm.
And look, we're talking about these real numbers and they're huge. So the problem is the industry has gone through so many changes that's been scary for a lot of people. So it seems like it needs to settle in a little bit, but it still should be absolutely looked at.
This is another question from Rosie, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the bank accounts, that Medicaid looks, if you have a joint bank account, that's all of your money. She asked, what if I joined my mother's bank account? Would Medicaid also look at my separate bank accounts?
That's a great question.
Mhm.
So we always run into these issues where sometimes a child will be a joint owner on a parent's account. And sometimes a parent will be a joint owner on a child's account. And you can run into some issues with that. To answer your question, just because you're joint on mom's account, on mom's checking, maybe for convenience purposes, Medicaid has no right to look at your other personal assets. That's not, anything that's in your name alone. But that account, depending on when the kid's name was put on the account, sometimes Medicaid can try to make an argument that that was a transfer or a gift because now, the child's name is on it, so the child can take all the money out. But, there are definitely some good fair hearing decisions out there on those topics of, people being added for the purposes of just convenience, being able to help mom pay bills and things like that. So that does come up, but you don't have to worry about your personal finances. They don't have any right to that.
But a better way to handle that when you want a child to handle daily administration and bill paying for you is by a power of attorney. So instead of adding your daughter so that she can write checks for you, make your daughter your power of attorney so she's not mixed into your assets for Medicaid purposes. Name her your power of attorney so she can do that for you, and you're not going to have any Medicaid issues in that regard.
And I want to say again to anyone watching that both Melissa and Jennifer's contact information will be sent around to everyone who participated here, and it'll also be listed under the YouTube video of this. So if you do want to reach out to them for more questions and counsel, you will be able to reach them, because I know that there are a lot of questions coming in. So thanks again, everyone, for your questions. Here's another question. My mom's condo was put into a revocable trust this year. Does it have to be put into an irrevocable trust for Medicaid home care planning?
So I'm assuming you're in New York, so I'll speak about New York. A revocable or revocable, which I say it revocable so that you can tell the difference even though both are right, because we have irrevocable and revocable. A revocable trust does not do anything for purposes of asset protection. So if we're moving a condo or a house into a trust to start that 5-year clock so that we can try to protect the asset in case there's a need for care down the road, it has to be an irrevocable trust. That being said, it has to be a properly prepared, properly drafted irrevocable trust, because there are certain things that we'll see drafted in irrevocable trusts that are done by, just trust and estates attorneys who don't work in the elder law arena, where maybe the language needs to be tweaked in order for it to work for Medicaid purposes. So revocable is not going to get you anywhere with the asset protection piece as it pertains to Medicaid.
And we do get clients who come in all the time and they're pretty upset to learn that when they show us our trust and they say, well, then why would I have done this? Why would that attorney have drafted this kind of trust for me? And what a revocable trust does is it avoids probate, and you would do a revocable trust if you have property in another state to avoid probate in that other state, such as, let's say you are a New York resident, but you own property in Florida, you might want to put that Florida property in a revocable trust. Anything else, if you're looking to protect assets, it's got to be in an irrevocable trust. Irrevocable. I feel like we say that a million times a day.
I know these topics seem simple to you because this is what you work on all the time, but I'm an outsider to this industry.
Oh, I know. It's just like we can't hammer it home enough, because it's so frustrating for us to deliver that bad news to people who put money in trust 10 years ago, and they feel like, oh, this is fabulous. We're all set. And then we say, oh, I'm so sorry. You have to start all over. You did nothing for asset protection. Wow. And then they're mad at us, and they're mad at themselves, and they're mad at that other attorney, and it just stinks all around. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. I know what you mean. So, okay. So is there anything else, Jennifer or Melissa, that either of you wanted to address that maybe we didn't get to yet? I'll ask that question of you as more of these questions come in.
The one thing that I just wanted to point to, just going back to kind of the scenario that we laid out in the beginning and the holistic approach here, is that I had mentioned that the adult child in the scenario had a developmentally disabled child. And so, really going to what Jennifer said in the beginning, it's so important that we look up the line and down the line when we're planning, because, our Medicaid applicant or our elderly person in that scenario may be leaving everything to the developmentally disabled child, because they're going to need funds for the rest of their life, depending on their situation. And so many times we'll see that a will that leaves everything directly to that child, and that child is probably going to be on Medicaid themselves. So any money they come into is going to be vulnerable. It could be taken by the government as repayment for care provided. So there's all different ways to set up an estate to make sure, if you're caring for a developmentally disabled individual or someone with special needs, to protect them. And there's also, Medicaid allowances. There's exempt transfers when there's a disabled child. So it's so important to make sure that you're giving all the information to the attorney, to make sure that, everything is kind of laid out and we know to ask those questions. But it just goes to, the importance of coming into a conference room and feeling totally comfortable with the person you're talking to. It's definitely not, like Jennifer said, it's not just like, legalese and this is what we do and get it done and you're out the door. It's, that people become part of, the family kind of thing. We know everything about them because we have to make sure that we're protecting every generation.
Yep.
It's a nice feeling.
Yeah.
Someone asked, can you give a typical legal cost to create advance directives, power of attorney, healthcare proxy will? Is there a roundabout figure you could give for the cost of those documents?
We really hate giving costs on webinars. But
Right,
call and
them.
ask for Janet.
Okay, attendees, you got to call Melissa and Jennifer here at Cona Elder Law to get any quotes on any of these documents.
But again, everyone should have advanced directives. When your kids go to college, they should have all the advanced directives.
Absolutely.
Anything can happen to anyone at any time, as we now know from COVID. That
Yeah.
certainly drove that home.
And we also like to point out that if your child is in college and you're paying for everything, even if they're, once they turn 18, no matter how much you're, in their lives and paying for college and paying for everything, you have no right to any information about their finances, about their medical, nothing.
Right. If they're in the ER, doesn't matter that you're their parent. You can't learn what's going on.
This is a question now that goes back to that scenario where we're talking about the developmentally disabled child and the money that that child would inherit. Patricia asked, would you assign a guardian? Now this is a Latin phrase, ad litem.
Ad litem.
In that case, would you assign a guardian ad litem in that case?
Well, not during the planning phase. During the planning phase, it's just making sure that everything is kind of tied up with a bow, and we know exactly where things are going when, the person who's leaving the assets pass away. But sometimes if money is left to its developmentally disabled individual in an estate, during that estate proceeding, the court will appoint somebody just to make sure that that individual's best interests are, being looked out for, and that's the guardian ad litem. So again, it's very much case by case, depends on the situation.
Right. So the court appoints a guardian ad litem, but when a child is reaching age 18, you can petition to name a guardian for that child so that you can continue to make financial and medical decisions for your child, because otherwise at age 18, they can make their own decisions, housing, things like that. So that's something that we discuss when a child is 16, 17. We'll bring a 17A proceeding in the surrogates court for developmentally disabled children.
And typically their own parents are being named as their guardian, just to be able to continue to make decisions going forward after the age of 18 or at the age of 18.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Good. Thank you. There were a lot of good questions that came in. It looks like that's it for right now, but if anyone has any other questions, we do have a few minutes to answer more questions, but I'll turn it back over to Jennifer and Melissa if there's anything else you wanted to expound on while we have time.
I guess on the special needs trust issue, just going back to that for a second, when it comes to estate planning, what you want to do is if you have a special needs child, you're leaving money in a will, typically in a special needs trust, so that the child with special needs can receive the inheritance and keep all of their government benefits. That's the end game. Otherwise, they either lose the inheritance or they lose their benefits. And we see this a lot where people just don't take care of it. They don't understand it, so they don't deal with it, which is kind of a common human nature thing. Head under the pillow, but nobody wants that. Or the other thing we see is that parents will say, I'm going to give it to my two other children and they'll do the right thing to take care of my third child with special needs. That is the worst thing, because there is no guarantee that'll happen. And at least with all the cases we've seen here, that has never happened. Nobody ever does the right thing when it comes to money. I can guarantee you that. Oh, did I tell you about our state litigation department? When it comes to money and emotions, we could do a whole other session on that. Nobody does the right thing. So that's just a recipe for disaster. So the right thing. The laws are set up to protect people, and the special needs laws really want to protect and really favor people with special needs, so that, like I said, they can keep their benefits, they can keep their inheritances. If someone comes into money in their lifetime, you can do this similarly in lifetime as opposed to in a will. So these are all things that that we handle, and Melissa's the expert in that. So you know, if anybody has questions on that they want to email to us after today's program, feel free. I know we don't have time for everything.
No, I know. It's like we said, it's very dense. The medical, financial, emotional piece, it's a triangle, and it's called that for a reason, because it's a lot of dense information with a lot of tentacles, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Now speak now or forever hold your peace. No, or you can contact Melissa and Jennifer after the webinar. That's what you can do. But thank you so much for Cona Elder Law for doing this webinar with me, for Schneps Media, and for answering all these questions, Jennifer and Melissa. And again, everyone who's watching will have access to Jennifer and Melissa's contact information, so you can always set up a call or shoot them an email to answer any other questions that you have, and maybe sit down with them and go over your family's individual complex situation. Because like they said, everyone has a unique family complex dynamic. So, and there's a lot to learn, and it's very dense. So thank you so much. Thank you, Jennifer and Melissa, for being part of this. And thank you to our live audience and to everyone watching. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sky. Always good to see you.
having us.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.